Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy Naruto Explain here, bringing you guys another Boruto Naruto Next Generation discussion on the fallout from Boruto chapter 78. And today, I want to take a look at a major elephant in the room that comes from the last Boruto manga chapter that has a lot of people talking, which is the whole escape of Kawaki from the Konoha shinobi who captured him. Now, when the spoilers first came out, I, like a lot of you guys, took it at face value since the spoilers did say Momoshiki released Kawaki, and at the time that made the most sense. Momoshiki eventually wants to feed Kawaki to the Ten Tails so he can harvest a chakra fruit, but that much hasn't changed despite losing the ability to resurrect using Boruto's body. However, after the chapter came out officially, reading that scene made me pause for a moment, and I wasn't able to put my finger on it at the time, and I asked you guys down in the comment section, did you guys think that Boruto was the one who released Kawaki? Because I kept having this gut feeling that was Boruto and not necessarily Momoshiki. Well, one of my followers on Twitter, Shyrose, made a really good thread on why she believes that this is actually Boruto Uzumaki who released Kawaki and not necessarily Momoshiki. So in today's Boruto fan theory, I'm not going to be looking at a Patreon suggested fan theory, but instead I'm going to be looking at this very well thought out fan theory from Shyrose. Now, as we go into this fan theory, I'm going to be 100% transparent here. I think there's something to this one, and it makes a lot of sense when we approach this from a character perspective and not a narrative one. So the theory says that, in short, when you look at the way that Momoshiki speaks when he's in control of Boruto's body, the language is different, which is absolutely true. Momoshiki uses words like shall and ye and other words that I refer to as being old-time language since they're more common in older eras. Even when Hagoromo first appeared and he spoke to Naruto, he spoke with that older verbiage, and he eventually had to dumb down the language to speak to Naruto, and it was because Naruto was too stupid to understand anything that he was saying, which is why you had that derpy looking expression on Naruto's face, because his brain was melting down when Hagoromo was speaking to him, but still had the old time language mixed in when he was speaking to Naruto. Momoshiki does speak with what we can call a common tongue language that you see people in the Naruto era usually use, but you see words like lass, and you see more condescending words like when he called Naruto an inferior creature earlier on in the manga. His sentence structure is more refined than what you get when you look at Boruto, and you look at the types of words that Boruto uses. For instance, in chapter 65 of the manga, he says, and I'm pretty much quoting here, checkmate Hokage, resign yourself. No matter how strong one is, the end often arrives in a pitifully abrupt way. Using that combination of words like resign yourself, using a phrase such as one is, using the word abrupt, that's not something you typically see with Boruto. Does Boruto know what those words are? Absolutely. Boruto is a genius, but he doesn't use them in his speech patterns. Boruto speaks with a very simplistic manner of speaking. He actually speaks quite a bit like how his father used to. Naruto is very to the point, only Boruto uses more sarcasm than his father did. Looking at this from a craft perspective is also something that we have to do here, because words are more than just tools that an author uses to give information or describe what's going on in the area. I've talked in the past how I worked as an editorial assistant. Here's the thing you have to keep in mind. How an author uses language is just as much as a part of the story as the plot itself. How language is used can craft a setting, and it can also be used for more than just describing how something looks. A classic example being the downfall of the House of Usher, which is a short story by Edgar Allan Poe. When you read the descriptions in that story very carefully and you start taking notes, you can make out the pattern of a woman's womb, which is absolutely intentional when you look at some of the substance of the story itself and you look at some of the things that are being hinted at in the story. To use manga as an example, since that was a literature example, but the same thing still applies with manga. Look at how Goku speaks in Dragon Ball's manga. He speaks with a bit of a country bumpkin flair to it versus someone like Vegeta or even early Piccolo. They have a more refined structure to their words. In Naruto's manga, the way that Naruto speaks is drastically different from the structure of someone like Itachi or Pain or Madara. In Boruto, there's a contrast between how Momoshiki speaks and how Boruto Uzumaki speaks. Shyrose, she gives a really good example of this when she writes out some dialogue in her post by saying Momoshiki would just say something like, stupid child, I gave you this opportunity, flee while you still have time, not you're surrounded Kawaki, hurry up and get lost. The use of the word flee is more in character for Momoshiki, as is mixing in more the condescending language, like saying the word boy or even calling Kawaki a flat-out fool like he did in Boruto chapter 66. The fact that Shyrose will pick up on something like this, it makes a lot of sense because she's a fanfic writer. She would look at this from a craft perspective because she understands what I said earlier. The use of language is really important. Any writer or person who extensively studies writing will tell you that the language characters use should be a reflection of their personality. A good writer doesn't need to rely on writing a character's name, like say character A's name said or spoke or thought or question. They can merely put the speech on paper and the reader can identify who it is who's speaking because they've subconsciously grown accustomed to how that particular character speaks when you get to a certain point in the story. And I would say 78 chapters into a long-running manga is more than enough time for something like that, so where you can start picking up on speech patterns. Granted, manga is a visual medium, but the same thing still applies here. You can pick up on how different characters speak. In universe, there are more signs that this is the case. Boruto didn't have his horn, which we normally see when Momoshiki hijacks Boruto. Sasuke noticed that as well because he was looking directly over at Boruto and asking himself, why did he let him go when he was trying to kill him? It's easy to think that it's Momoshiki, especially after Kawaki is screaming Momoshiki, and that might have been intentional. And I want to say this much: this isn't the first time that Kawaki's made the mistake in telling the difference between Boruto and Momoshiki. When Boruto first used True Essence of Karma, Kawaki immediately thought that it was Momoshiki, and it wasn't until later on that he realizes that it's actually Boruto. It's not crazy to think that Kawaki made this mistake yet again. Likely, he saw the Byakugan eye and he assumed it was Momoshiki. Sasuke, on the other hand, took note of the lack of horn, which is why he was looking at Boruto so closely. It also explains why Sasuke had that line of thinking. If Momoshiki manifested in that manner like that, Sasuke would be more on guard. Sasuke, more than anybody else, knows when Momoshiki comes out, people tend to start losing limbs. Also, narratively, just given Boruto and Momoshiki's thoughts and consciousness are constantly mixing now, Momoshiki could have very well taken control alongside Boruto, which is why the horn never manifested, but the other eye was closed. Backing things up a bit, looking at it from a character perspective, it makes a lot of sense as well. A character as sensitive as Boruto had just seen his friend, his brother, nearly kill Boruto's own childhood friend. He knows Momoshiki's prophecy to lose everything is coming. If you let Momoshiki tell it, it's here right now. And he's surrounded by people that he cares about during a time that Kawaki has made it clear he's going to kill everyone who gets between himself and Boruto. In that moment right then and there were a lot of people Boruto cared about who could have been killed. Character-wise, letting Kawaki escape and finding a way to deal with Kawaki alone without endangering those who he cares about, that's something Boruto Uzumaki would do. Now, to play devil's advocate here, like we do with a lot of the fan theories we look at, there's a potential thumbscrew in this. In the chapter after the Karma Seal goes away and the Byakugan eye is closing, Boruto has the shocked dots around his head and the speech bubble has the speechless text with the dots on it. So it is possible that Boruto's realizing he's back in control, which means his subconscious might have been suppressed during that time, and we see the shocked dots around his head again before Momoshiki speaks to Boruto's consciousness. However, there's room for either one of these to be correct. You can make an argument for either one. Momoshiki being in control and saving Kawaki works because it's to his benefit to literally save Kawaki so he can feed him to the Ten Tails, because even though he can't resurrect inside of Boruto's body, he can still hijack it. Boruto's 100% Otsutsuki. Boruto can gain the most out the chakra fruit, and Momoshiki's plan is to take control of Boruto's body permanently, since he can't resurrect using it. And the other side of it is that Boruto being the one who let Kawaki go and the horn wasn't shown because Boruto was in control and faking it like it was Momoshiki, or it's another continued side effect of Boruto being brought back to life with Karma and their consciousness continuing to mix together, and Boruto and Momoshiki were both in the driver's seat. That being said, I'm curious to know you guys' thoughts on this. While you think that over, click here to watch my Chainsaw Man Chapter 121 review, or click here for this Boruto chapter review.